Thank you for joining us today on Indivisible America. I'm your host, John Stubbins. Welcome to the show. And by the way, we're streaming out to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, pill.net, and freedomfirstnetwork.com. But again, welcome to the show, America. We're glad to have you today. I want to talk about Alice Marie Johnson for just a minute. She was the huge success story through President Trump's First Step Act. I'm sure that you got a chance to listen to her at the RNC and also at other events that the president has had advocating for the First Step Act. So just wanted to kind of mention her as we kick off today's show. We're going to be discussing prison reform, the First Step Act, this nonsense that the left is using with the Bail Project from Michael Novogratz. I'm sure you've heard about him on Tucker, and also the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And with that in mind, I want to bring on my guest today, Osigah Kakhu. Osigah, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Another blessed day in this country. Glad to be alive and well and good health.
Well, we're thrilled to have you today. And by the way, everybody, I'm going to have Osigah's contact information scrolling at the bottom during this broadcast. But Osigah, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you became involved. By the way, Osigah is a proud Trump supporter. He's an advocate for President Trump, and he is a advocate for the First Step Act, amongst other things. And this is a man with strong conservative values, and he's a huge advocate for those. But tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Osigah, so they can kind of get to know you.
Hey, so as you know, my name's Osigah. I'm conservative as well. From Greensboro, North Carolina, born and raised. At first, growing up, I grew up in a more diverse community that was mainly focused as far as liberal, democratic. And growing up, I started to gain conservative values as I went into business and sales. One thing that was light for me is also, my parents being immigrants and growing up and seeing that and actually, knowing as far as immigration laws and struggles like that. I grew up trying not to make excuses for myself and self accountability. So nowadays, let's fast forward to I guess what everybody wants to know about with Trump. Now, my family, we have a small family business, a home care agency out in North Carolina. Now, the thing with that is when Hillary was running, we thought she would be the best option to maybe make us, strike it rich because of the social programs and things like that and Medicaid, because when you're a hospital or an entity like in healthcare, you send the bill to the government with the one payer system and all that. So a lot of healthcare places fight for that. Even like right now with even COVID, you get thousands of dollars per patient, not per death, just diagnosis alone. So that gives an incentive for people to, diagnose somebody with COVID, but that's another story. So at first we were big, Hillary and, Democratic as far as supporting it for that reason. And we were also devout Catholics. So we had, values of pro-life, of course, helping the poor and things like that and self-accountability. Now, when Hillary, she lost, I looked into, what made her lose. And that's where my disdain for the media came. When I saw that the media lied to us at 92% chance that Hillary was going to win. And I just kept looking into it. So I was just one of those Americans that decided to give Trump a chance. And I did. And I liked, I guess I saw as far as his business mindset, as far as what he meant by, the whole thing on immigration, as far as, the border, because it is true. Every country has borders. They have the right to protect their borders. And I saw that as well as that. And being from, son of immigrants, legal immigrants, I understood that even to come into the country illegally, it hurts the immigrant itself, because there's so many
Sure.
things that you're limited, And so I started looking at things from a fact perspective instead of an emotional perspective. and that's where conservative values start to grow. Now, at the time I was in college, and this is where this was the turning point for me. Uh, I took about a semester off from college. I didn't really, like it as much, and I started working in sales, and that's when the family business started going up. So I saved up a good, chunk of money, and I was just, making on my own a little bit, working without a degree, which I was surprised because I was always raised to, get a degree and whatnot. And then I took one semester off and another semester off, and eventually the debt collector for the student debt kept calling. And
Ah.
then I got, yeah, I got fed up and I just worked a little bit more. And then one day they called again, and I talked it over with my parents and my accountant. And the next day I called them back and I settled the debt and I wrote a big fat check to pay off my student loans, and I never looked back.
Good for you.
And then as far as that, moving on into politics, I never thought I would really get into politics. I do remember my dad watching the Democratic National Convention of 2012, and they were voting to take God out the bylaws. And when just for them to bring that up for vote, that was enough for my father to leave the Democratic Party. So that was his exit before it was cool. That was his
Was
walk
it
away.
was it because they removed God from the charter?
No, no, not just that. Because they voted for it. They brought it up to vote like that. It was even in discussion to take out God. That was it then. And I think at that time, I think either Obama administration or their headquarters called and said to take away that vote. But I guess the vote got brought it back again later. But I'm talking about 2012. And then as far as that,
I remember that
yeah.
race very well.
Yeah. So as far as that, I think that was the conservative seed growing. Then my family started watching more Fox News, more conservative, getting the other side of the story, which I'll get on to that too. And then it started sounding all right. And, like it started to make sense as far as, the other side. And as the Democratic Party kept getting left and radical, it's like the Republican Party. I mean, they have their problems too. And I'm not
Sure.
a Republican. I'm more of a conservative. But you count, your tallies here and there,
That's
and
right.
you make your decision. So looking now, I remember I remember I was working one job one day in the break room. I was seeing Trump on TV after he was elected, and that was the time I gave him a chance. So I was more lenient just to listen to what he had to say. A lot of people in the room, they were shaking their head. The men were shaking their head, and then one woman was like, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong with this man." But I noticed that the guy was shaking his head only because he thought that was what he was supposed to do, that it was the popular thing to do, it's an acceptable thing in society to do. He wasn't shaking his head because he was actually listening to what the man was saying. It's just because he saw a woman in the room, and we were all black, so he assumed that's what we wanted to see. So that put the light bulb in my head. And that same very night, I go on social media, and I see black kids in MAGA hats, and I was like, "Whoa! I didn't know this existed." So me growing up too, I had Republican uncles, and there's very few Republicans in the community, but I saw them as brave. I didn't see them as right. You get what I'm saying? Because I was always raised, Democrat good, Republican bad. So that's the way I saw those kids. So I was like, well, they're kids. Let me just message them, just tell them like, um, at least I appreciate them being brave. Not to say that I was on their side, but just them
Sure.
being brave, standing up for what they believed in, because
Let me
their
ask you
comments. Yeah,
let me ask you a quick question about that, OC.
yeah.
And by the way, Osigah, he goes by OC. OC, I just wanted to ask you. So let me ask you this. How do I say this? So around you, there's other black people around you, and you see that they're all kind of nodding towards the Democratic Party. Did you get a sense or a feel for why that is? Why that's automatically assumed?
Now, yes, I have a great sense of an idea of why that is. But then it was like the seed was planted. I was like, wow, he's kind of just doing what he thinks he should do, what he should do and not. He's not really listening to the guy speak, about certain things, and he's not looking past the emotional side. Like, yes, as far as, Trump can be brash, he can be direct, but that's what is needed to be successful. Sometimes
Yes.
you have to be straight up sometimes, and people appreciate that too more, because every day you go through people like, they're yes man, and that'll just, compliment things even if they don't like it, if they don't like stuff, and they're just not honest. And here's Trump, he came out as that.
That's right.
And And yeah, so that was what I noticed from, the people nodding in the break room.
Do you feel like, let me ask you this, and I'm sure you've got your finger on the pulse of your community there in North Carolina. Um, what is the sense that you get? Do you believe that let me ask you this. Let me put it another way. Where is the Black community at large getting what they perceive the president to be? Where are they getting their thoughts and their ideas about him? Is it what people tell them? Is it from their friends? Where do they get this image of President Trump that we know is nonsense?
Simple. It's the media. So one is the media, and I would say the Democratic Party, and its supporters. So the media is very powerful. They've been doing this for years.
Oh yeah,
whether it's manipulating the public and making the public believe certain things. So they're professionals in what they do. People don't realize that. And so what they'll do is the media can make somebody look bad or good anytime they want. Like, for example, they've painted Nixon not to be like one of the best presidents, even though he did help relations overseas. As far as I think with China, they left things like that out. For example, also growing up, the media would paint like continents like Africa in bad light. So me growing up, a lot of people thought Africa was huts and developed, like severely underdeveloped. They didn't know that there was actually cities there and things like that. Also, with the Black community, I also bring this point up. Growing up too, if you want to talk about systematic racism or whatever, the media did paint Black people in a bad light,
Sure.
and people will eat that up. Now today, you switch it over. It's kind of cool to be Black. It's kind of cool to be African, as far as virtue signaling and all that. So this is the era of, this is post civil rights era, but like the media will feed off of that too. That they also notice that minorities and people in general are emotional. And I always say this: when you're emotional, psychologically, your mind shuts off a side of logical thinking. Like, you can't think straight when you're emotional, whether you're drunk, angry, happy. There's a side that cuts off, so that leaves an avenue for let's say misinformation, or you to believe what would excite you or anger you. You tend to believe that more. So the media, they will feed off of that, because they're in the advertising businesses. The more ratings, the more shock value, that's what pays the bills as far as that. Also,
and not only that,
yeah.
but there is a obviously about BLM and the Marxist movement that they have. They're using racism, okay? And so you go back to the civil rights era, and we passed all these laws. The Democrats, they tried to fight against that legislation, where the Republicans tried to get it passed to make discrimination illegal, and the Democrats fought that. And people that know their history, they found out that the Democratic Party was the party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK. They were responsible for all these racist ideas in the Deep South. And the thing that's interesting to me is you're right. You fast forward to 2020, and now it's cool to be Black, right? And by the way, that doesn't even affect me or my family, because I have so many Black friends that I grew up with. My daughter is mixed, so we come from a different side of looking at this. But what's interesting to me is that, and I talk to my Black friends about this, and they can't believe it, but there's a small contingent of people. Really, it's a very small group if you look at the percentages, but there is a Black Power, Black Liberation Army movement that goes back to the Weather Underground. They have ties to the CCP. They have ties to Islamic Jihad. And that part of the movement, the Marxist movement to burn America down, within that movement, there are people in the Black community that are okay with racism as long as it's towards white people. Okay. So they're not okay with it if white people discriminate against black people. They're only okay with it if it's the other way around. And everybody just shuts up now. And you're right, the media is leading the charge on this. But you've got people out there like LeBron and Oprah who are chanting and really lighting the fire for this.
Yeah, they're part of the media too.
What's that?
They're part of the media too.
That's right. But they don't realize that the very thing that they don't want, which is racism, they're actually perpetuating. And I'm wondering, with your feet on the ground there, are you seeing that? Do you get a sense of that within the community, that they want racism, or that people in general are good and that they don't?
As far as that, what the narrative, because you gotta see in the narrative as far as the media. Also, the media has stakeholders. Like a lot of, I heard 80% of media is Democrat leaning, or their stakeholders and their shareholders are Democrats. So of course they want a certain outcome coming towards this election.
Sure,
and that's one way to drive it with emotions and politics and emotions. With emotions, you don't have to say too many things. You can just say one sentence or two, and it just gets the vote automatically for the less informed voter, which in advanced countries like America, people don't have to continuously follow up in politics. They have the
oh, we lost you for a second. I can't hear you.
a part of.
There you go.
Yeah. So they have that luxury of not having to be a part of politics and things like that. They can go about their day, freedom in the country. Now, as far as the influencers and things like that, like you say, like LeBron and all them, they're actually encouraged, to take a stand. But the narrative now is not even that it's racist. It's that people have the right to be angry. They have because of like segregation and things like that. They feel that they're avenging, they're standing up for their ancestors, things like that. But they don't realize that they themselves are no better than what was perpetuated with racism and things like that. It's like they're repeating history in a sense like that. And like, because I had some talk with people and even some friends, and they even try to make the argument that black people can't be racist. Well, me personally, I don't go by emotion, I go by logic. So I just go to the dictionary and I say, hey, where does this say that a certain race can't be racist? It's just the definition is clear. Even to the point that, I mean, in the Webster's dictionary, they're trying to add prejudice and all that stuff, which is fine, but nowhere does that still say that, black people can't be racist and all that stuff, and things like that. And so the thing is, and also if you look back on Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King, he would have been against that. He wanted, everybody to be equal as far as that, everybody to be held accountable for their actions, their character. And so this is actually going against Dr. Martin Luther King's word, as far as that.
Yeah. And you bring up an interesting point, because you're a man that comes from a family that values the pride in having your own business, right? Being having a small business, being self-employed. And I agree. I think that the calculation, the formula, let's call it, for success, whether it's in white America, black America, Hispanic America, I think when people go into business for themselves and they have a small business, I think they appreciate more those conservative values. Okay. And it teaches them to be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, not make excuses, not point the finger at this person or that person. They basically, as Americans, you're living the American dream. You're in control of your destiny by the amount of work that you and your family put in. And I'm sure you've discovered that by doing this. So, absolutely, Martin Luther King would be angry with what is going on, because, if you look back and you say, okay, we made all this progress, and I really believe that America made a ton of progress from the time of MLK up until the time where Obama was elected, excuse me. And
Absolutely.
I think that Obama, because of who he is and what his background is, and really the stuff that a lot of Americans don't know about him, unfortunately, if they knew, they wouldn't be so impressed with him. There's a lot of people out there that voted for him that even though he's not in office, they still value what he thinks.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that Obama created a lot of this. And his community organizing all the way to the Obama phones and Ferguson and Baltimore, he could have really been the catalyst to bring us together at a time. Because look, this is the first black president ever elected. And we have people standing up telling us that this is a systemic racist country. And it's hard for me to put those two thoughts together because it doesn't make any sense. There's no way, if you live in a systemic racist country, that a black man could get elected as president. It just can't happen.
I agree.
So, they don't jive. And I believe that he set back our racial relations probably more than 50 years from some of the decisions that he made to live out his own agenda, which a lot of people don't realize is extremely radical.
Yeah, and the thing what I say about Obama is that he's a politician. And the thing that you'll find with a lot of politicians, that they're better politicians than public servants. Now, Obama was a master politician. He fed off of emotions. He centered and pointed them. He said the right things, even if he didn't believe it. He would grasp onto what's trending at the time. Example, with the whole Trayvon Martin thing, he said his son would look like Trayvon Martin.
That's right.
With the LGBT movement, at first he was against it. Now he did a lot for them. He was the LGBT president. Even having rainbow lights on the White House.
Sure.
All kinds of different things. As long as it was cool, Obama was there. He was also nice spoken,
very nice. He's a great orator.
Yeah,
he's a great orator.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
And so that's all the makings of of a great politician. Now, on the other hand, you have Trump. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. In the business world, you have to be honest. You have to be stern to make it. And then people don't get that. A lot of people live in the victimhood mentality. Like right now, we're in the everybody gets the trophy era. That type of stuff. So like those guys in that era, we've grown up, now, and like we're like definitely entitled to things. We make excuses. Like the other day, I was speaking to people, and they'll make so many excuses. They'll say, "Oh, I make minimum wage, or I make only $10 an hour. How can I live?" and stuff like that. And so I mean that's one of as far as the things that politicians would feed off of. And also with let's say programs like socialist programs or social programs in general, they do give people an incentive to stay where they're at and not, progress as far as in the society. And really, it's a mindset thing when it comes down to it. Like my mindset right now is I'm at a point where I feel that everything is my fault. So I try not to make excuses. I just try and grind. Not saying that I'm super rich or I made it or anything, but I'm doing all right. As far as that, even before politics. Like I mean, a lot of people say, oh, there's money here and you're grifting and all that stuff, but it's not what cutouts to be. I just got into politics because I felt that, I talked about conservative values and capitalism, and it just sucked me in a little bit.
Not only that, OC, but just as an individual, don't you feel more free? Like you have more control over your life and your outcome by having a small business and being in control of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is also, let's keep in mind, not everybody's meant to be a business person, and you don't have to be. Like in America, there's a plethora of jobs, and there's a plethora of side jobs and all kinds of ways to make money that you don't have to necessarily. It's like the thing is, it comes just down to decisions and discipline. So, for example, like you're hearing all this stuff like you got to go to college, you have to get married, you have to buy a house and this new car. By the time you're talking about, let's say college, you're $80,000 in debt. Maybe college. Maybe you went to school to major in lesbian dance theory, and you're $80,000 in debt. So you get out of school, right? You get that nice plush apartment that's costing you 2,000 or so a month, or 1,000 a month, depending where you live. Then you get that car. That's where you're talking
Food,
$36,000. Yeah,
food, gas, insurance.
we're talking six figures out here. So and then those are all the things that you told me. Then the wedding comes. The wedding also another pleasant debt. So we're talking well in excess of hundreds of $1,000s in debt just because of that. When
Easy.
let's say you could have just stayed low, like even right now, I'm speaking from my student apartment, and it's really cheap, and I just use that to save. I'm saving up for a house for the down payment. Now, mind you, society would tell me, "Oh, get a big boy apartment, and pay that 1,200, 15,000, 15,000 a month, and plus utilities." But I'm kind of, just trying to be disciplined and humble and staying here and saving my money and things like that. Even the car
You're,
jack.
what
Yeah,
it is. No, see, you're being what they call prudent.
yeah, yeah,
And we all have to live we live
yeah,
within our means, right?
yeah.
So
Below, I say live below your means.
even below,
At this point,
look, you don't
yeah,
have to. Even if you have money, you
yeah,
don't have to spend extravagantly. In
yeah,
fact, I would argue the opposite. The
yeah,
people that have been successful financially are a lot of times you'll find out that these are people that scrimped and saved
yep,
and lived under their means
yep,
so that they can build that war chest
yep.
to go on and do bigger things. It's
Oh yeah,
hard to save money if you're living above your means and
yep.
going out to dinner every night and buying a new
Mhm.
Mercedes and paying $3,000 a month if you live in New York City or in LA or whatever or Miami, any place that's got higher rent or
Oh yeah.
mortgages.
Hmm.
So I applaud you for doing that. That's very prudent, and you'll find out that as you get older, that decision that you made is going to help you. It's going to help you down the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, hopefully it's helping. It's helping now a lot, and as far as that, people always want to talk about what somebody else has or like somebody's privilege and whatnot. But I always like, tell people to, put into perspective, like, uh, your privilege just being an American alone. You won the lottery being born in this country. As far as that, like people in countries with caste systems and a lot of corruption, they literally don't have that chance to climb up in society. But the thing is, Americans, I always say we are spoiled. A lot of American citizens that I talk to, they can't imagine a country where electricity is taken because the government, controls that, or where, as far as healthcare, as far as, certain jobs that they can and can't get, things like that, or like just the luxury of a convenience store across the corner, like
That's
literally
right.
the beauty of
Things that they
capitalism.
take for granted,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Look,
Literally the
and I'll tell
beauty of
you right now,
capitalism.
you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. It's interesting because a lot of these people that are, that are constantly the victim or complaining or I don't like this, I don't like that, give me this, give me that. If a lot of these people were transplanted to Venezuela or
mm,
Iran or Russia or
yeah,
France, they wouldn't like life very
yeah,
much. Okay?
yeah,
They don't realize. See, our people, you're right. Our people have gotten lazy. They've gotten they've got this victim mentality. They've got this entitlement mentality, and they don't realize that in this country, this is the freest country in the world. I challenge anybody to find a better place to live. And not only that, your freedoms, the things that you have access to, they are spoiled, OC. They're spoiled rotten. And because of them being spoiled, they don't realize how good they have it.
yeah. And it's also lack of experience. Like, you grow up, also thinking that other people in the country or in the world aren't as woke or intelligent or experienced as you. And you take that naive, like, thinking, and you forget about yourself, that maybe you're also unexposed to the world and things like that. And America is one thing too, because also look at the election, the Rust Belt states. A lot of people, like in my area, which is relatively blue, they're also closing their world. But since they're urban, they think that they're more diverse and whatnot. They don't even know, like, how the Rust Belt states, like what's, good for them as far as that they maybe perceive them as just everybody's racist there and whatnot, but they don't take other people into account. They don't think about, we don't really, as humans, we don't tend to think about people other than ourselves,
People,
especially when
that's
you have
right.
the media feeding into that. Yeah.
I was
So
going
when
to
you
say
have the
that
media
you
feeding into
hit
that,
that on the
yeah.
head. People aren't
Mm.
very considerate towards one another. Uh, they don't place value. Like when I was a kid, I knew all of our neighbors, okay, where my parents lived. And if you wanted to borrow a cup of sugar or an egg or a little bit of milk to make something, you could go to any one of your neighbors. People didn't even lock their car doors back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've heard of
nowadays,
that.
nowadays nobody talks to one another. It's just complain, victim, give me this, give me that, entitlement. And it's all about me. I'm the star. Everybody look at me, right? Instead of the art of service,
Yep.
okay, to mankind. In other words, being good to one another, okay, you end up getting more done when you take the focus off of oneself and put the focus on someone else, and the rewards from that are huge. They go a long way. And not only that, I'll go a step further. When you do that, when you take your focus and put it on someone else, a lot of times, without you even knowing it, opportunity opens.
Oh yeah.
Okay? Because people see you, they watch you, and they say, you know what? That's an individual that I'd like to help. That's an individual that I'd like to make a phone call for. You know what I mean? To do something for them. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a maybe it's a business opportunity. Maybe it's a relationship that they can have. But it's something that furthers their lives and makes it more rich and better. So you're absolutely right, OC. And that leads me to this discussion on the First Step Act. Take Alice Marie Johnson. She spoke at the RNC. This is a woman who I believe, when she stands up at the podium and she talks about how grateful she is to President Trump for taking a chance on her, releasing her from prison early, getting rid of a ton of that sentence that she still had to serve, and giving her the second chance that she craved and really wanted. And I applaud President Trump and Senator Tim Scott and many other people for getting that legislation done.
Yep. And the beauty about the First Step Act that I always say, which proves, like what, Trump is as a president, which, the media is also, they keep that on the hush, is that one, it was a bipartisan act, so because when I remember, because I was an advocate for it. I helped, basically what I did, I would help prep lobbyists, give them pointers when they would go up and lobby and stuff. And I'll just, just pass them messages and stuff, say, hey, these are some facts and these are some statistics. And this is what, certain people go through. Because I actually have had friends who've gone to prison for nonviolent crimes, even a business advisor that he went to prison for tax evasion. But it's not the tax evasion that is like normal every day. Oh, somebody just didn't want to pay their taxes. It's just that it was his first time dealing with that amount of money that in that tax bracket. It's not just a sit down with your accountant to go over your taxes. You need a whole team. He didn't know how to find that consulting or how to hire and organize those things. So the IRS, they came after him way faster, because there was millions, we're talking about here. And before he knew it, he was in court, sentenced, and boom, and
how long did he get, OC?
About 2 or 3 years in, federal, as far as that. And I visited him a few times, and that's actually what kind of, pushed me and gave me the chance to advocate for that, behind the scenes as far as that.
Did he have a criminal record at all before this?
Yes, but it was like why it was like more like with his business, but it wasn't like, like it was one thing, I think that he went for state or whatnot, but it wasn't like, like he had a career out of it,
Okay.
but nonetheless, like, I'm not saying the First Step Act didn't free him, but like his lawyer, did try and get on that. But a lot of people that were in prison with him, they were leaving every day, because of that act, and so he was also telling me that he saw the benefits coming through that fast. And that's another misconception people have about, prison and prison people. Like, they have a lot of time on their hands. They read, they consult with their lawyers, they want to get out. And with the whole thing about Florida, and let's go into the bail project, talk about that, is like, the reason that they're doing a bail project, or like, like, for example, Bloomberg is paying, off people's bails in Florida, is because they think that those votes will automatically go Democratic. That's not always the case, because, prisoners, they do read up on laws, they do read up on certain things and policies and certain shit like that. And a lot of them may surprise the country and vote towards Trump, or vote towards a side that fought for prison reform.
Interesting.
And yeah, and so I mean, I'm not going to take that bet, but it's a bet, nonetheless. And so, as far as with the First Step Act, it's bipartisan. Like, Cory Booker, was also in on it, a Democrat, and other Democrats as well. And then the Senate kind of, took it under their wing, and they passed it through. And then Trump signed into law. Now, the thing is, Trump signed into law because people actually came to speak to him about it. And the way with Trump is like, you talk over something with him, you come to the White House and propose something. If it makes sense, he's putting it through. He's not like, biased. Like, he's a businessman. He makes deals. So that's one thing that people don't, realize about Trump. Like, if you come and talk to him, you come and work with him, something will get done, as far as
Sure.
that. And that's the beauty of, Trump. Now, as far as like the media didn't advertise that too much.
No.
And even when we were at the White House, celebrating it for, African American History Month and all that stuff, like, there's a few media outlets there, but it was more frowns than actual coverage. And it was sad. It was sad, and then
And it makes you wonder why can't everybody celebrate that together? And then why, if you figure out the game that they're playing, it makes sense. And that's why it's so important, and that's why I brought it up earlier. That's why it's so important to be able to communicate that, whether it's to the white community, the black community, the Hispanic community. People need to understand that, because they're not going to get the truth from the mainstream media.
Yeah, no. Highly doubt it. Yeah, it has to fit a certain agenda at big states, especially during election time. They have a lot riding on this election. Everybody does. And once they realize that what they didn't work for 2016, it's like they have to work overtime. Like, even Don Lemon, he vowed, and this just shows blatant bias. He vowed on the election night, the morning after election night, he vowed, said, we're going to attack them from every angle. And that's not reporting. That's bias. It's like, what are you doing? Let's report it. He made a vow on TV. No shame. And stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
Don Lemon and Como and the people over on MSNBC, Al Sharpton, all they're all part of the problem. And if we could here's what's crazy, because I work with the opportunity zones with people like Leon Benjamin and Senator Scott. If we could just get the opportunity, I'm not even asking for a guarantee. All we want is the opportunity to come into these opportunity zones, okay, and to be able to talk to youth, white kids, black kids, Hispanic kids that are underprivileged, and give them an option where we can help them and let them take control of their lives, versus all they're getting from the Democrats is learning how to hate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We've got the Democrats using with this Bell project, which the Bell project is funded by a billionaire by the name of Michael Novogratz. And if you've been watching Tucker Carlson, you know who Michael Novogratz is.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy, he's a scumbag. He won't even come on the show because he doesn't want to face tough questions about why he's letting out murderers.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line. You take someone like Alice Marie Johnson, who deserves a second chance. But when you have people that get out of prison and they're out there raping someone as soon as they get out, or they're torturing someone, killing someone, murdering someone else, kidnapping children. Look, we have to be stern. And here's the deal. If you want to commit crimes, then you belong in prison. Okay? If you want to do something constructive and you have a second chance coming, make the most of that second chance. America is forgiving, but we're not going to forgive people that go to prison for killing someone, and then we give them a chance and they get out and start murdering again.
Oh, yeah.
That's ridiculous. You
That's
can't.
the absence of law and order as far as that, because, it's like it helps, the criminals. So like that makes people feel less safe. That's saying, okay, if I report this, he's just going to be out on the streets again. Maybe he'll come back out for me. Now,
right.
As far as, his motive is, I guess, to, fund the protests and, heighten the tension that will hopefully elect, Joe Biden and unseat Trump. Now, the thing with that is, he's giving, like, whoever wants to protest, whether it's Antifa or not, the go ahead that I got your back if you get arrested. So act lawlessly as you please. And also the bill, because like we mentioned before the show, a lot of these names, they make them sound, so nice and it's so compassionate and things like that they don't.
Right.
People don't take into account that this could be a woman beater.
Right.
This could be
a murderer.
A murderer. Yep. Serial
a
killer, rapist.
Pedophile.
Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of things. As far as that.
And nobody wants these people in their community. I guarantee the black community, the white community, Hispanic community, we don't want these people, right? People want peace. They want to be able to live the American dream. They want to be able to spend time with their friends, their family, and thrive, not be brought down. And look, we've talked about this so many times over the last month or so, couple months really. But look, the facts are, whether people like it or not, there are people out there, BLM, Antifa, Islamic jihadists in the streets, part of these riots, burning cities, hurting people, looting stores. And some of these people, the people that are doing that stuff, a lot of them are just plain thugs, plain criminals. And they don't want police around so that there'd be nobody there to stop them from committing crimes. If there's no police, they can loot everywhere, every day. Okay? So, and then you also have the element that's anarchist, that want the country to be brought to its knees, to burn the country down, to rewrite our history, topple the statues, defund the police, all these things. And look, most Americans, just using common sense, we know they don't want that. They want safety in their communities, for their kids, for their grandkids, for themselves, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you want to be able to walk down the street, whether it's at night, whether it's in broad daylight, and not have to worry about someone pulling out a gun and coming up to your temple and pulling the trigger on you. But they're so brazen. They're so brazen, OC, that they're going up to cops and shooting them point blank.
Yeah, it's common. I think it's common sense as far as people do want to be safe. Now, back to what I was saying about virtue signaling and people doing what's popular, is that at this point people will either overlook that or say, hey, the prisoners are people too, or they want to attack the system. Now, yes, in retrospect, they have an argument that the system is flawed, and I do agree, and that's why you're able to make amendments, and that's the beauty of this country, that we can change things, as far as that,
Sure.
and as long as we're able
The
to prove
system is
support.
not perfect.
Yeah,
The,
yeah,
the system is not perfect, but
absolutely.
I guarantee you our system is better than anybody else's.
Yeah, yeah, because we have the ability to fix it, to amend it, things like that. And I think that problems can be solved civilly, in court, and that's where people miss the that's where the complaining culture, the victimhood culture, they miss the point where you can take these things to court and explain it logically and have it make sense to where that it can be passed into law or things like that. Like, for example, the LGBT community is great at this. During Obama, they got a lot of their LGBT rights passed and all those things like that. BLM, not so much. Actually, BLM got hijacked around Trayvon Martin time. It got hijacked by the LGBT movement, and things like that. So I think that people need to worry about actually, advocating in the system for certain things that they feel that are missing. Now, I do think that a lot of the things that BLM says is a myth, as far as that, because, like, compared to the 60s and segregation time, this is now like a utopia, for you, almost all people. Like, you have the opportunity. There's nothing that you can't do. There's like nobody can tell me what I can't do as, like as a black man or just an
Right.
American, as far as that. Like, 'cause some people may say things like, oh, I gotta look over my shoulder, I can't get pulled over. But I've been pulled over, whether
So
it's
have I.
time been for speeding, another
So,
time
so have I.
my lights were off and they reminded me to take my to get new lights and things like that. Even when I was driving one time without tags, I went to court many months later and they just threw it out, as far as that. Now, as long as you don't commit crimes and things like that, of course, like if you're selling drugs, you're going to be antsy, if you're stealing stuff, you're going to be antsy. If you have a record, of course, against you, you're going to be antsy, you
If you
know.
get pulled over by the police and you don't cooperate and you decide that you're going to
Yeah,
fight
yeah,
the police,
yeah,
what do you expect?
yeah, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
look, here's what I tell people. Because I've been pulled over, okay, and multiple times in my life. So if I get pulled over, the last thing that I'm going to do is fight with the police.
Yeah,
Okay. When I get pulled over, I pull to the side of the road. I keep my seatbelt on. I don't jump out of the car like an
yeah,
idiot. Okay. The policeman comes up to the window. He asks me for my license, my
mhm,
registration, my insurance. I give it to him. I
yeah.
mean, look, if you haven't done anything wrong, you don't have anything to fear.
Even if
You
you have,
know,
even if you have, even if you have done something wrong, even if
even
you're
if you
speeding,
have.
even if you have a warrant, just cooperate. As far as things
But I
like
mean,
that,
but I mean,
it'll go
but
a long way.
OC, if you
Yeah,
have a warrant
yeah,
and the police pull you over, you know you have a warrant.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
should expect that you're going to get
yeah,
handcuffed.
yeah,
Okay? I mean, look, again, common sense. Look,
yeah,
if I do something wrong and I break a law and a warrant out for my arrest and I'm hiding from the police, okay? Because that's what you're doing. You know that if you get pulled over, you know they're going to run a check on you and you know they're
yeah,
going to find out that you have a warrant. That's common sense. So if you get pulled over, you've got two choices. One, you can remain calm and just accept the fact that you have a warrant and they got you.
yeah,
Or you can fight with the police and probably go home in a body bag.
yeah,
Okay. To me, it's a no brainer. I want
yeah,
to live. So
absolutely.
I'm not going to fight the police. That's so dumb. And if
Yeah,
we can get that message to the communities and say,
mhm,
look, the police aren't perfect. The justice system's not perfect. We all make mistakes. And yes, there are bad apples out there. But
absolutely.
but for the most part, if you get pulled over for anything, if you just follow the law and don't do anything stupid, number one, you're going home alive that night. Number two, if it's something silly and you cooperate, the officer might send you on your way with no ticket.
Yeah.
He might.
It's true.
You know? So we just have to give it a chance. Look, we're running out of time. Great discussion. I wanted to ask you, OC, how are you doing with the president's campaign down in North Carolina? How is it going? What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah. So right now, I work with a plethora of organizations. I was, working on President Trump's campaign, which is pretty much the same work in other organizations at this point. It's mainly canvassing, knocking doors, making phone calls, and gathering volunteers to also help with that. Now I'm specifically, exclusively with Susan B. Anthony List. They're a pro-life organization that, we basically canvass and campaign for pro-life candidates, including President Trump, Senator Tillis, the guy running for governor, lieutenant governor, and so on. So now the efforts are going great. We're pushing, like certain issues and policies that, people care about, and pointing it out that, that Trump, what Trump is doing. So it's basically we're a voice outside of the media, and that does make a big difference. You see a physical person that actually,
Absolutely.
is conservative, or they're with Trump, or as far as their views, and they explain their views. Like even I knock in the bluest of areas. When I run into conservatives or people that feel the same way, they are so relieved. It gives them hope, and also it gains us more people. Because when I
Sure.
knock doors that are probably traditionally Democrat. Not to say that I've gotten a lot of, I get a lot of hate, as far as that, but that comes with the job. And, I'm tough skinned. I've seen, and worse, and like there's more to come, as far as that. But as far as the campaign, now North Carolina is a swing state. What is pushing North Carolina to be probably blue is the cities. An average of, hundreds of people move to the cities almost a day, you know, and that's what people don't realize, whether it's from homeless people to people just moving from California and New York, and people will vote for what they fled. And that's what the Democrats are, definitely banking on, as well as, there is allegations of voter fraud, which can be taken into account,
Yep.
So as far as the mail-in ballots, now the absentee ballot in North Carolina is seemingly trustworthy, but the problem that we say is the implementation of mass absentee ballot, as far as that. And how I describe it to people is basically like you mail in your ballot, right? And let's say somebody's getting mail from a traditionally Democratic neighborhood, and they don't want, a Democratic candidate to win. They can either just trash it, or hide it, and it just appears after the election, and that's just easy as that. So, and I always encourage, I'm definitely fully for going to vote in person. And there's early voting, which starts October 15th, and there's of course election day voting, but I prefer early voting. And people talk about COVID and say, oh, they're scared, but they're acting like they're not going out every day now. They're acting
Right.
like they're in home in a bubble, wrapped up, all that stuff. They go out for the grocery store. They go out if they want
Absolutely.
to go, even the party,
Sure.
People to party.
Yeah.
So all that stuff, and then like I'm just really it bothers me. And then if you, let's say we can do the social distancing, we can do the mask with voting. You can wipe down the poll station, anything you want.
Common sense, right? Common sense.
Just vote in person. Now, of course, the people that need the absentee ballot, like the soldiers and a few senior citizens, why not? Fine. But to make regular people just say, oh, they're gonna turn in their ballot, I'm like, come on, guys. And then one is I think that they also said with the absentee ballot, they actually have somebody come there to witness you sign it. But that's getting a little shaky right now, because they could be like, oh, they just did whatever, and then they voted, and then of course, like with dead people voting and old people voting, like somebody's grandchild can vote for their grandmom, and
Right. Right.
all kinds of crazy stuff. That's why like voter ID was needed, but our governor, I don't know if you're familiar with Roy Cooper, he's
I
Democratic, but
do.
we voted for voter ID. We wanted that. North Carolinians wanted that, and he did the Democratic move and just vetoed it. Which yeah, it should hurt him in the upcoming election. But
You would
I,
think
I
so.
hope, yeah, yeah. I couldn't have said it any better. Um, so
I mean, look,
it's
and
scary
again,
what's gonna happen.
voter ID is another common sense
Yeah,
thing. And
yeah,
everybody, look, everybody out there, even if you don't drive a car, you probably have a state ID, right? To cash a
absolutely.
check. So
Yeah,
it,
yeah. I
it's
don't know anybody
again,
without the ID
yeah. I mean, you can't
unless
do
you're a document
anything.
store. Yeah,
Yeah, you can't do anything in
yeah,
America without some form of ID. So it's the most ridiculous excuse
yeah.
I've ever heard. Voter ID should be a slam dunk in all
Yeah.
50 states. Um,
Not voter ID. I'll settle at just your driver's license, just your ID.
Fine.
Just I would settle. Like the
Me
thing about
too.
them saying voter
I'll
ID,
settle for that as
I'll
well.
settle.
But you make it uniform for the whole country, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and it's done. It's easy. You know, we do have we've noticed this in the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you've seen it. We've had postal workers that are taking ballots and dumping them into ditches.
I've
Did you
seen.
see that?
I've seen and heard. I've seen and heard, man. It's getting out, and then like the thing is, the mainstream media will ignore it because one, there's not too much proof on that, even though there's pictures, and two, it's like an agenda coming with that, But let it be, Republicans throwing away Democratic ballots, then that gets their people's attention.
Right.
But I think what would help the election if you just push it to people that to just go to the polls, wear your mask because they could throw away your ballot too, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Like I
That's
always tell
true.
Democrats too. I'm like, look, if somebody who's who you perceive as, let's say, a white supremacist is working the polls, that the mail comes into their office or whatever, you're gonna trust them? No, go vote. As far as that, go punch your vote
Yeah.
in. No need to vote in
I'm
the house.
placing it. I'm placing
Yeah,
that ballot into the box myself.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
look, everybody get out there and vote. You can vote in person. There's early voting pretty
yeah,
much across America now with all this
yeah,
nonsense. So you can go out and vote early and you can
yeah.
do it in person. And if you
Mhm.
want to wear a mask, wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Fine.
Wear the plastic shield.
Wear the
You can
plastic shield. I don't
come
want to
out
hear
the
any excuses. Everybody
yeah.
get out there and vote. OC, it was great having you on the show, brother. And again, you can see OC's contact info. It's been scrolling at the bottom the entire show. So you can contact him, follow him on Twitter, follow him on Facebook, follow him on LinkedIn. Get in touch with OC and make sure that you let him know what you're thinking and how you can get involved. Maybe you can work with OC. Maybe you can pair together to do some things with the Trump campaign. Regardless of what it is, make sure that you get in touch with OC and connect as patriots, as Americans, as people that care about one another. OC, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Stubbins. Take care.
Had a great time. Thanks for
You too.
joining us today, America. We'll see you next week. Until then, like I said, get out and vote. Do it early. Don't wait. Don't leave it in the hands of the Democrats to dictate your future, your family's future, your children, your grandkids. You take it upon yourself to do what's right, destiny, pulling up by your own bootstraps. Good night. Good God bless.